don't see anybody else joining us, so I'll go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, thank you for joining us. I'll be going over the East Intercommunity Area Plan and discussing how it may impact you and your community. So I'm going to go ahead and present a little bit of background and a little bit of information on the plan, and then we'll open it up for some discussion and questions. So if everyone is good to go, I'll go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me okay? I know we had a little bit of issues with audio last time. All
Yeah, I can
right.
hear you fine.
Perfect. Thank you, Arthur, for confirming. All right. So starting us off, we'll give a little bit of background here on kind of how the plans have been developed and what's the process been so far. So I'll start off with the reason for why we developed these community area plans, which is that Charlotte has been continuously growing for decades and we are projected to continue growing. So in response to that projected growth, our city adopted the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan in 2021, which defines our 20-year vision for growth and change in Charlotte. And so the plan essentially calls for future growth to benefit as many people as possible. So in the next 20 years, we're looking at, over 400,000 new residents and over 200,000 additional jobs. So while the comprehensive plan provides that broader vision for our community, there's other levels of guidance that are needed to make this vision come to life. So as you see here on the screen, this is our planning framework that was adopted within the comprehensive plan, and it identifies the subsequent levels of guidance that are needed. So level one here you see is our comprehensive plan, and then right below that, level two is strategic plans, which are citywide documents, and they provide more details than the comprehensive plan on a particular topic. So for example, our strategic mobility plan provides more guidance on how to realize goal 5, which is creating safe and equitable mobility choices. Level 3 is these community area plans, which provide more guidance for the appropriate land uses, building form, and infrastructure needed throughout the plan geography. And then underneath level 3, you'll see level 4, which is specific plans, which focus on smaller geographies and then provide more guidance for implementation of specific projects. But it is important to note that levels 2 through 4 do all build upon that vision and goals that were outlined in the comprehensive plan. So community area plans are essentially about creating complete communities, which means creating places that integrate both housing, job opportunities, and daily goods in an accessible manner. So, in other words, basically where you live, work, and play in that environment that you do those things in. This is just an overview of our process so far. The community area plans were developed with a 5-phase process that's occurred over 2 years. During those 2 years, there's been multiple engagement opportunities during each phase. And so the outcomes of each phase have been shared along the way and are available on our website. So I'll go ahead and move on from here, but we just kind of wanted to give you guys an overview. We are in phase 5, so we're looking at review and adoption, and kind of engaging the community on these draft plans. This slide kind of summarizes that engagement that I mentioned we've done to date. We've had interactions, including online, social media campaigns, emails, anything in between, and we've reached over 400,000 people. We've had over 6,000 in-person interactions, and then we've received about 1,700 comments so far. So that kind of gives you an overview and a general idea of how that's gone. And then, so these plans specifically, apologies, these plans specifically were developed with a systematic process. So that means they were all developed in the same way and they have the same components and format within them. We'll be getting into East Inter specifically, as I mentioned, but just wanted to mention that they are going to follow that kind of same format. And while they were developed systematically, however, there is a few unique contents in each that kind of reflect the individual character of the geography, as well as some new common policy guidance that is meant to help us achieve the vision outlined in the comprehensive plan. And so these plans, these community area plans, do provide a common set of considerations as well for all decision makers to ensure that we're consistently evaluating options that are in line with that vision. And over time, these considerations are meant to help ensure that growth is accommodated in a way that respects established neighborhoods, aligns growth with infrastructure capacity, but also creates a vibrant mixed use centers for everyone. So we're going to kind of start getting into East Inners specifically. And then once we're through that, we can take some specific questions about the plan itself, or if you have other questions. So this is what the table of contents is going to look like. This is East Inners, but if you look at any of the other plans, you're going to see the same kind of contents and organization as I mentioned. And so we'll keep this table of contents up just to keep track as we talk about some areas of this plan. So we'll start with our community needs and goals for chapter 3. This page and this section is going to outline this geography's greatest needs and prioritized goals. So these needs are focused on increasing access to housing choices, job opportunities, daily goods and services, and then also reducing environmental impacts. So the plan's focused on these 4 needs because these are the metrics that were identified in the comprehensive plan as paramount for ensuring that future growth benefits as many people as possible. So the 10 plan goals were linked to these 4 metrics, and if a metric scored less than 5, the associated goals were identified as priority goals for the geography. All goals are important, but this prioritized list helps prioritize limited dollars and resources for this area. Chapter 4, which is after that, focuses on recommended development patterns for the geography via the 2040 policy map. And the colors on the map relate to the types and intensity of development that's appropriate for the area. And you can learn more about these colors, which are called place types, in the appendix. There are descriptions there that kind of go into some more detail about kind of common characteristics of each place type. And importantly, the plans do recommend a large portion of the geography remain as is. So that means if redevelopment occurs in these areas, like neighborhood 1, which is that light yellow you see on the map, then the new development should match the scale and intensity of development on the ground today. This East Inner Plan does recommend that 37% of existing development does evolve into a different type of development than what exists today. For this plan, an example would be commercial changing into community activity center or a neighborhood activity center. Community activity centers are going to kind of be that middle blue you see on the map kind of at the center there. And then the neighborhood activity center is going to be that lighter pink color. So this targeted amount of change will help to accommodate that future projected growth I've mentioned in a way that we hope respects neighborhoods, but also pairs growth with infrastructure capacity and creates mixed use centers, which will help increase access across Charlotte. So this map is expected to change over time, and there's guidance within the program guide, specifically in Table 3 for the minor map amendment criteria that is meant to ensure that future requests are aligned with this growth strategy. So this page kind of shows some of those changes I mentioned that are recommended changes. And then below those change types, you'll see at the top, which are commercial to CAC, as I mentioned, and commercial to NAC. Those goals have been identified as priority goals, and those are the goals that align with these types of changes and how that can kind of help reach those goals. So those pages within the document are kind of going to outline that for you and give you a kind of deeper understanding on how those changes can help achieve those goals. I'll also highlight here the neighborhood toolkit. This is a very important section because it provides like information on existing projects and programs that neighborhoods can tap into to amenitize like common open space, create a neighborhood park. These are existing, this is essentially a catalog of the great programs that are currently available to residents that can help address their needs. And the intent is that it's a resource to empower neighborhoods who do want to take some action. And this is part of the appendix, which is the same for all geographies and can be found on the plan site, where all the plans are listed as its own document. We're going to kind of focus on some of the other sections within supporting the vision, starting with mobility. So you'll see here on the right, we've got the East Inner Streets map and then some information on the East Inner and citywide SIAs. So the mobility section was developed in coordination with CDOT, CATS, and CRTPO. It restates that Goal 5, safe and equitable mobility, is important across Charlotte, and it includes a clip of the citywide streets maps, which outlines the future cross section for arterial streets in Charlotte. Smaller streets are informed by UDO regulations, and it also summarizes the citywide strategic mobility plan and highlights the strategic investment areas within this geography. As a reminder, the strategic mobility plan is level 2 guidance that outlines the city's mobility policies. So SIA is a citywide investment strategy for maximizing the city's limited investment dollars in an effective and impactful manner. Next, the mobility section does include as well a new level of guidance called the mobility assessment. This assessment evaluates how well our future mixed use places are meeting our aspirations as outlined in the place type descriptions. These assessments should be used by all stakeholders, including residents, developers, city officials, to inform future development and infrastructure programs or projects within these areas. So for example, if a developer wants to rezone a site within one of these mixed use locations, they should use this assessment to propose a project that improves conditions. Similarly, community members can evaluate a proposed project against this assessment and be able to determine if the project contributes to the area's aspirations. And then another one to highlight, which is newer for us, as Kathy had mentioned in the previous one, if anyone was here. This is kind of a newer section for us that builds upon the comprehensive plan's vision to reduce environmental impacts across the city. And this section does provide more detailed analysis of the environmental impacts within the plan geography. So for this one, East Inner. And you can see that here in the top right, you can see the environmental justice assessment. It also introduces heat impacts, which is a new environmental metric that should be considered in future decision making. And that's that bottom right map that shows the land surface temperature in the area. So we'll answer some questions about anything specific with the plans, but just to give you guys an idea of what's next. So after adoption, plans will be implemented through future development, public-private partnerships, capital improvements, and rezonings and alignment rezoning. Community area plans are an important component of Charlotte's planning framework, but they're not the only one in our toolbox. We also have specific plans. They're on level 4 that focus on smaller geographies and are more implementation focused. So we have the ability to develop this guidance if and when needed across the city. You know, planning is cyclical, so we do plan to monitor and update recent plans, comp plans, and community area plans every 8 to 10 years. And then for next steps, staff will be sharing comments received and potential amendments to the draft plans with Planning Committee next Tuesday. Council has decided to delay their decision on adoption from May 27th we will announce specific dates later to give the public more time to review and comment on the plans. So council decision has tentatively been pushed to sometime in June. And so now I'll go ahead and pause here and give you guys an opportunity to ask some specific questions, or if you have any questions about the presentation or want to go back to something, I'll go ahead and open the floor for you guys now.
All right, it sounds good. Thank you, Maddie.
Sure thing.
I'm actually just looking through the actual plan myself, like the documents. So I'm just
Sure,
like trying to like find the see if there's anything out there that like sticks out to me.
sure.
So it might be a little bit before I make a comment.
That is perfectly fine. Happy to give you a minute. If there was anything that maybe sparked your interest from the presentation, happy to go into that further as well. Bo, did you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that?
No,
Arthur,
I don't
you
have
can,
any questions at this time.
you
Okay.
probably already know you all can comment on the plans
Mm-hmm.
directly online if you're interested
Yeah.
in doing that.
And that is what I have up here, and I can send you guys East Inner in our chat real quick. Let me grab that link for you all. And so I'll give you a quick little overview while we're here of how you can comment, since I know you mentioned you might have some comments later. So let me grab this. So you can view East Inner here. That'll take you directly there. And then if you are interested in kind of just the, let me see. You can also from this page scroll up and view any of the other plants. So for East Inner here, this is our comment uh, function here. So all you have to do is when you're on this page, you can click anywhere and leave a comment. You can also see comments that others have made. East Inner, I believe we don't have a ton of comments currently. But if you did want to leave a comment, you can just click anywhere and it'll prompt you and walk you through how to leave a comment on the plan. So
Okay,
yeah,
sounds good. Thank you. Uh,
absolutely.
oh yeah, just looking through environmental justice. I don't think I saw that slide, but like looking through it on the actual plan. Wow, it is incredible how that area around Elizabeth Avenue and the CPCC over there, uh, that the projected like as summer average heat is, or not, I guess
Hmm.
actual, however it's measured, is like decidedly like red. Like
Yeah.
that makes sense, but it's like wow.
Yeah, and on that previous page, this kind of gives you an idea of like how we looked at some of these things. But if you are somewhat familiar with some of this kind of data, things like impervious surfaces and what's in that area, which it sounds like you're somewhat familiar, definitely does contribute to that urban heat. And this is something we actually worked with UNC Charlotte, some of the environmental professors there helped us kind of collect some of this data. So this is pretty new for us, but yeah,
Yeah, it's just a little bit astounding just to see like how definitely it is definitely going to be hot over there because like it is mostly just campus over there and a couple businesses. I
yeah,
don't see too many trees over there.
exactly, yes, and definitely those surfaces, those impervious surfaces, contribute a lot to that urban heat.
But yeah, it was like included in the plan somewhere is like there like a plan to like figure out how to reduce that in any way, like anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're looking specifically at this environmental section, you've got your maps here, you've got your metrics that were part of the assessment, our urban heat map as we've seen, and then on this next page, you'll see environmental justice recommendations. So these are policy recommendations that are meant to try and address or at bare minimum kind of correct our course for this topic. Here, for example, there was a large focus on our manufacturing and logistics areas. that is definitely not an ideal condition for people to be living directly next to. We know that that does not create a wonderful condition for both environmental but also, health. So, our first EJ recommendation here does kind of propose that we try and ensure that future residents do not live near undesirable or unhealthy land uses, and to discourage development and redevelopment in areas designated as manufacturing and logistics. So trying to encourage others to, if you're going to develop this site, let's look at other ways to do it that are not just putting residential next to M&L. And then also other things like mitigating the surface temperatures. There's some guidance in here, some policy suggestions on how we can do that. And then additionally, we do have the Strategic Energy Action Plan, and our partners over with sustainability also have some information out that kind of gets deeper into that. So these community area plans are kind of just setting the stage to say, hey, work does need to be done in these areas. We've identified that. And then our partners with other departments would be responsible for then taking those recommendations and trying to implement them through their work. So we did work with the other departments through like the city to partner with them throughout this process so that they would be aware of the recommendations we're making and then what projects and programs they can contribute to help with those things as well. So,
Alrighty.
yeah.
That sounds pretty good. Thank you. Yeah, because like
Absolutely.
obviously, uh, it is gonna be a problem in the future. Like if that area like doesn't get like some mitigation measures for the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you, for East Inner specifically, I'll scroll down to page 70. On page 70, we have a table that kind of takes these policies and looks at what type are they, who would be the lead, who's the support, what's the time frame. And we're on a lot of them, but of course you look at mobility and you're going to see cats and CDOT, open space. We're definitely going to be there, but we're also going to have partners through the county, partners through other divisions, environmental justice, housing and neighborhood services might be on for support, stormwater, if we're talking about water pollutants, or if we're talking about surface temperature and like impermeable surfaces, we're going to have to pull in CATS and CDOT, or sustainability. Like those partners are going to be very important in implementing these recommendations and hopefully mitigating those issues we've kind of identified. So, helpful chart.
Alrighty. Cool.
Yeah.
And in this is perhaps a bit of a silly comment, but the Viva Chicken over on Elizabeth Avenue, it does have a couple of like parallel parking spots. I think some of the other businesses do, but I think when I think the Gold Line, is it right? That streetcar that drives by,
Yeah. Yes.
or
The gold line is the streetcar. Yes.
yeah, that one. It when it does come by, it does like make it a little bit difficult for anyone in those parallel parking spots to like get out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
But I think it's
mean,
already been done, so I don't know what else can be done about it.
yeah, I know that our partners over in mobility would definitely be the ones dealing with that. But I think there's always some opportunities for comment. You're welcome to leave that comment in the plan and it'll get passed to them. It's a little outside of our purview, but totally
Yeah.
understand, totally get it. Um, and definitely appreciate the comments still. We're happy to hear it. So, yeah. Did you
All
have
right.
any other questions specific to the plans or
Um,
anything?
uh, Nothing immediately because like it is a lot of information to
It
digest,
is.
and to disclose something like I don't actually live in this area, but I was just a little bit interested in seeing like what
Yeah,
things were
yeah,
really planned over here.
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of people who do live in the surrounding areas still live, work, and play here. I mentioned that in relation to our place types and like trying to create complete communities. Charlotte is not really just those who live in Charlotte. You might work here, you might visit here, you might have friends here. It's, you still might be in, experiencing some of these things, which is totally
Yeah.
fair. So, we have a lot of people who utilize the city who are not necessarily living here. That's okay. We're still happy to have you. Appreciate you
Yeah.
coming out.
No problem. Uh, but yeah, I can't exactly, I think, of anything else right now, but you still can just like
Sure.
leave comments on the plan itself, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll be taking comments the rest of this week. And I think we're accepting comments and then until through the rest of the week and the weekend. And then we'll be presenting comments to our planning committee just to let them know kind of what we've heard. And then, as I mentioned in the slide, we won't be going to city council quite yet. That's gonna be kind of temporarily delayed till June. But yeah, you're welcome to. And if you have questions or anything like that, I think our email is in the chat, but I'll go ahead and repost that for you just in case. Happy to answer questions. There you go.
All right.
So yeah, just let us know if you have any other questions. But yeah, feel free to comment on the plans. They'll be up. So if you need anything, just let us know.
All right, sounds good. Thank you,
Thanks.
Maddie. And I think I'll also head out for the evening, so take care. And
Perfect.
hopefully someone else shows up too.
No worries, no worries. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it and have a great
But
night.
yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Sure thing. Bye. Hello. Hello, are you able to hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm
I'm
in.
doing,
I was just muting, and
yeah,
embarrassingly enough, I was in the wrong classroom.
that's okay. That's all right. So I am talking about East Inner. Is that where you want to be?
Yeah, I'm in Elizabeth, and
Oh, perfect.
I'm on the Elizabeth Community Association on the board.
Great.
So,
Great. Well, thank you
uh,
for joining us.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing you kind of heard the initial spiel in your last classroom, like
Uh,
the
yes,
background stuff. Great.
about
So,
the review and then how they are rolling out the
mhm.
May vote, I believe.
What was that? Sorry.
The vote in May.
Yes, so we are tentatively scheduled for June. So we'll be presenting to planning committee now that did get pushed back. So if you heard May, that was previously the thing. But we're actually scheduled tentatively for June. We will be sharing comments with planning committee on Tuesday, but council will not start looking at making a decision until tentatively June, which let me just pull that up real quick. Yeah, so there we go. So right now, yeah, planning committee, like they will review and potentially referral, but council decision will be delayed a little bit because we want to give, council wants to give people a little bit more time to review and comment on the plans. So again, we don't have a specific date yet for June, but we'll announce as we get more information. We'll definitely make sure that we share that with the community. Gotcha. So I'm happy to go through if you have specific questions or if you just kind of want a general overview on like East Inner and what's in there. Whatever, you're the only one in here, so happy to go at your pace.
I don't mind skimming through them. I assume it'll be posted online, but
Mhm.
more of a specific question that you may or may not be able to answer. I understand in October they had the hurricane relief bill that they passed in the state, and they peppered in another um, statute or agenda item on there that involves the down zoning that they're trying to limit. Are you familiar with that? With the down zoning they're doing in City of Charlotte, or how that'll affect? Because I understand that it does not apply to overlays. And then specifically
Yeah.
Elizabeth, the historic Elizabeth Neighborhood Foundation, it has a big push. So, but they, of
Yeah.
course, independent of my.
Mhm. Yeah. So that would probably be beyond kind of like long range's scope because we're looking more at like policy and guidance. Any sort of regulatory things, especially like related to land use for us, is gonna go through like our entitlements division. So long range, like I said, is like policy guidance, but legislation is going to be more involved with like the UDO and like you mentioned, like some of the overlays and then like the historic districts and like things like that. So you are welcome to ask those questions, put those comments on the plan. I can happy to try and get you in touch with somebody. But that is most likely going to be like our legislative side and not exactly us. So I don't know the exact answer to that. But we do have teams that oversee those things. So
Specifically regarding transportation, do you have any updates regarding the 2040 plan with transportation? Um,
yeah,
the bigger things we have in Elizabeth, I get I mean, it probably pales in comparison to what the city gets, but I get dozens of emails a week about parking issues, and I mean, it's tied to the restaurants, specifically at like Pecan, Caswell, and
sure.
and then my predecessor worked diligently on doing the 7th Street conversion, and we
Sure.
don't know the results of that. But they, switched that over, and a lot of that traffic's kind of spilling over onto the
Mhm.
side streets to cut through. So,
Yeah, I can share with you like what level of mobility we get into, because I mean, if that's just something that you're aware of and concerned with, obviously that's going to be somewhat applicable. Starting with this slide here on the right side, you'll see that we have some priority goals identified. For your area, the most important priorities are mitigating environmental impacts. That's like the highest priority. But then, like many of the other geographies, due to the growth and everything, we've identified that it would be beneficial if there was an increased access to housing. But specifically looking at mobility, so goal 4, transit and trail oriented development, applies to you all. You have some transit lines there. And then goal 5, which is safe and equitable mobility, is applicable to all. Like that's just incorporated into everything because mobility is included in everything, just like open space. Specifically for East Inner, if we kind of switch over to the mobility section, what we're going to have in this document is a look at the streets map, which is a somewhat more recent as well. That was being developed at the same time like as the policy map. And then also East Inner and citywide SIAs. So strategic investment areas. And then you're also going to see a mobility assessment here. So that is looking at some criteria on its own. And so what I can do is let me pull up your plan so that we kind of look at that. So let me scroll. So this is probably going to be of great interest to you, which is this section. So for you, it starts on page 32. So kind of that overarching, like I said, goal 5 is applicable everywhere. This section is going to focus on a mixture of things for East Inner with the assessment, but also some general kind of guidance and policies that are meant to kind of address mobility citywide. Some information on our partners, CAT, CDOT, CRTPO. But then we start talking about like the strategic mobility plan and the streets map. So specifically, this is going to outline what are your parkways, boulevards, avenues, and main streets. And that's where you're going to see like information on what the guidance is for parking. So like once you kind of figure out what kind of street you're looking at, they can kind of tell you a little bit more about like what that really means. And so you can see your street map here, but then it does get into a little bit more information from our partners about how we invest. There's some graphics there, but then as we get into the assessment, that's when we're going to start seeing more specific elements of East Inner, so where you are. So this chart kind of shows you what are the aspirational like elements, and then kind of comparing those with the place type. And then here's your assessment. So this is going to look at a mixture of all those different kind of mobility elements and metrics. And further information on this, which I know you said you're part of the Elizabeth group. So in the appendix, there is a detailed like assessment methodology and how all of this was developed. So like when you're talking to people, I know this is a lot of information. So like a lot of people want to know like how did we get these numbers? How did we even get like what is this based off of? And so the appendix does have like a detailed methodology on how these assessments were done. And so this looks at specific areas within the geography. So, and it's labeled here on this map. And then, and we were talking about Elizabeth, right? I think you mentioned something along Elizabeth. So M13, if we scroll down and we look at M13 here, Elizabeth and Hawthorne, you can see that parking is not aligned with aspirations. So like that's a great tool to kind of look at some of those and you can dig into the methodology and why, but like this is kind of a snapshot of like what these elements and characteristics that we want, how they're looking for each of these areas. So like, for example, you could look at that Elizabeth Avenue area and see kind of what you're asking about. Like, what does that parking look like from a policy level? And what are our bike networks looking like? And then how these different areas compare to one another. And then in our legend, you can see here it's either aligned with aspirations, somewhat aligned, or not aligned. So that area, again, M13, specifically looking at parking, would not be aligned with the aspirations. Again, I know it's a lot of information. So, but yeah, that's a great section if you've got people kind of asking about like, what is parking looking like from a policy standpoint in this area? What is the bike network looking like? And if you're seeing it's not aligned, then this plan more than likely is going to have guidance on how can we align that with policy. So that's when we get into our recommendations. After these SIA areas, and our mobility partners have been great about providing a lot of information on these specific areas. So I would definitely recommend reading through some of this SIA information because they do provide some very specific like recommendations, like focusing on providing, bike or increasing multimodal for certain areas. Again, those are going to be citywide, and then we've identified which ones are related to this area. And then that's when it'll go into some programs, like we were talking about. There's some different metrics, and here's some programs that go along with that. And then here are your strategic mobility plan recommendations. So that's going to kind of give these overarching recommendations for the city, and these apply to all areas. And then you can see those as well if we scroll down here in our implementation section. All the recommendations for the different sections are in this chart, and it shows you like who would be on that kind of project or that recommendation, who's involved in that recommendation and what type is it. And then also in this section here on the column, it talks about how it relates back to the comprehensive plan so that you can kind of see how those recommendations are aligning with the policy guidance from the comprehensive plan. So those are your kind of mobility sections there. You've got the mobility assessment and how that's looking, and then also these recommendations to try and mitigate some of that.
I think this is online as well. Is that correct?
Yep.
Is this the
Yes.
latest, greatest that's listed on there?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll send that back in the chat here. So you can visit this link, and even if you're on East Inner, you can always scroll up and view any of the other ones. So like I mentioned, there is going to be some information in our appendix and then also in the program guide that's going to be helpful for you and your buddies over there. So this is where I was saying we've got some methodology. You're specifically interested in the mobility one. So that's where they kind of outline like what these metrics really meant and like how they found, like how they identified what's aligned, what's not aligned. And it continues into kind of all the methodology behind that. So that's, and here's our parking. And that'll kind of help with understanding the assessment a little bit more. So, yep.
And then since I missed the initial part of the breakout or the breakout classroom, what specifically is your role with the City of Charlotte?
Sure. Yeah. So I am a planner with the long range planning division. So it's City of Charlotte planning, design, and development. Our division is long range planning. And then I'm in the community planning program area. with some of our other staff on today, but all of our staff that you see other than Monica Holmes, who is our department director, we're all long range. So we're looking at these like long range policy documents.
Have y'all used any other city as a template or guidance,
Mhm.
at least recently? Because I'll always see it through like Axios Charlotte or Charlotte Observer. It's like they send a dozen of you
Mhm.
guys to like Minneapolis or something. So that's always something curious.
Yeah, so a big part of the comprehensive plan was actually looking at case studies, which I'm sure you're familiar with that term. There was a lot of work done on looking at comprehensive plans that have been done. Again, this is kind of a subsequent step of implementing the comprehensive plan, so it's all built on that same kind of guidance within the comprehensive plan. But we definitely did look at some case studies for that. um, and I know there's some other areas that have done some community area plans, but even Charlotte hadn't had a comprehensive plan since like the 70s. So there's now legal requirements for cities to have them, which was not a previous like legal requirement. But we did have some case studies. I know they've done a lot of analysis, fiscal impact studies, like all that kind of stuff. And that can actually be found on our, I'll send you the pathway, but on our resources page, um, this is going to be probably pretty interesting to you. These are summaries from the comprehensive plan. There's audits, there's a fiscal impact analysis here, and I'll resend this link. But some of these kind of go into that kind of preliminary foundation of the comprehensive plan and then subsequent implementation steps. Let me send them again. But yeah, those can be really helpful. And then in the comprehensive plan itself, you can also see throughout there's case studies as you like go through the plan. I'm not sure exactly where the first one might be, but if you're looking through the plan, there is case studies there. That's where those actually live. So yeah, it was based off of a mixture of research and case studies and analyses and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. I don't want to be lazy and just ask questions that are probably all listed on the 2040 plan. So
You're good.
I
That's
didn't
what we're
expect
here for.
I didn't expect to be the only one in the breakout. So
No, you're
uh,
good. Happy to answer. There's no expectations on certain kind of the questions. That's what we're here for. So happy to answer anything. We got 5 minutes, but also happy to let you explore on your own, whatever works.
yeah, that's all I have. Do you uh, recommend people reach out to you, or is there sort of a liaison or resource regarding specific questions?
So I would contact our main email because we as in me and another person do monitor that daily. So if you have questions, reach out there and one of us will get back to you. That's the best way because multiple of us like monitor it. So if you have any questions or further questions, please reach out to us there. I know you said that you are part of the Elizabeth community, so please let them know that like please comment. It's, even if you don't have, if you thought they see things you like, that's also great. We want to know either that like it's something that people are supportive of, or if you have suggestions or other recommendations that you'd like to see. We'll be evaluating all comments and staff will be responding to them. And then, like I said, like we are sharing those with our elected and appointed officials. So please let them know.
Will do. And then once again, the last milestone or next significant date, you said June, they would make a motion to approved?
Yes, so if planning committee refers us to city council for a decision sometime tentatively in June, they would be making that decision and taking a vote. So it does have, like, we basically get referred to them and then they make a decision. It's just that date is TBD.
Is it similar like a rezoning style, or would it have to go through planning and then to sort of ink it, it goes to city council?
Yeah. Planning committee is going to be the one who, like, essentially says, yes, this should go to council for consideration. So we do present to them first. And like I said, I think we're talking to them Monday about the comments we've received. Again, since that's pushed back, there's always subject to things can change. We're not 100% sure yet, but we will be sharing with planning committee what we've heard so far and staff responses to what we've received up until the beginning of this week. So any new comments like today and tomorrow, it's obviously going to take a little time for staff to take a look at those and do what we need to do to share them with our officials. But hypothetically, we're going to present to them. If they refer us, council would then at some point tentatively in June make a decision. So
Perfect. Well, that's all I had. I won't take up either any more of your time either. So,
well, thank
sorry
you.
about that. So,
Sure thing.
the end of the session, right?
Yep.
For the okay.
Yep.
Well, maybe I'll reach out an email just to
Sure
read
thing.
my intent, but I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great night.
Thank you, Maddie.
Sure thing.